Africa Update with Louw-Vaudran.
On hashtag Africa Updates Asked today, Angola is hosting the 21st extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union. The meeting is set to provide a platform for political consultation among AU member states on conflict prevention, the promotion of peace and stability, and the peaceful resolution of crisis across the continent. And we want to know, how effective has the African Union been in actually resolving conflict on the continent? I'll share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes on +27 83 288 6684. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. When the story moves, we move. Africa Update with Louw-Vaudran. 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Angola will host the 21st extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government of the African Union in Luanda on the 30th of August, focusing on strengthening mechanisms for conflict prevention and resolution in Africa. The meeting will provide a platform for political consultation among AU member states on conflict prevention, the promotion of peace and stability, and the peaceful resolution of crisis across the continent. The session is expected to deepen dialogue among member states and reinforce African responses to peace and security challenges. And to discuss this further, we have Liesl Louw-Vaudran, International Crisis Group Senior Advisor, African Union. Liesl, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Now, Liesl, just how significant is hosting the AU summit in Luanda?
I think it is very important for the African Union, but also for Angola itself. You know, President Lourenço is the AU champion for peace and reconciliation. He has been, for a couple of years, and has been involved in various initiatives, the Luanda process for the Great Lakes, for example, and chaired the African Union last year. So my suspicion is this extraordinary summit was originally planned for last year, but, you know, the African Union has got a very full schedule. Heads of state, you know, Southern African heads of state were just here in Durban for a SADC summit. There's a lot going on. So it's been moved now to next weekend. And I think, it's crucial and timely because of the crisis that is actually happening on the continent.
Now, the session will be held under the theme Strengthening Mechanisms for Conflict Prevention and Resolution in Africa. What do you make of this theme?
Yes, I mean, it's extremely important, as I said, given the conflicts and the urgency of, you know, our conflicts on the continent from Sudan to the Sahel and the Great Lakes. So, conflict prevention and early warning has really been one of the things the African Union has struggled with for a long time, for various reasons. One of them is just that leaders around the continent often disagree about what the root causes are of a conflict and how to deal with it. For example, you know, in the Great Lakes, that's one of the things that have been hampering mediation and resolution. But there's also now geopolitical considerations, issues like sovereignty. When it comes to this issue of early warning, a key institution of the African Union is the Peace and Security Council. It has meetings very, very regularly to discuss conflict. It comes up with an analysis and then recommendations of what to do. But many states in Africa are reluctant to have their conflicts on the agenda, and we do see that. So early warning, as I said, is something that's often been very difficult, but at the summit, you know, there can be a greater sense of urgency and maybe even some commitments, for example, for the PSC to have some stronger resolutions quicker because, because of the urgency, respond in good time. So there are a couple of things that the AU and heads, and member states of the AU can do to improve the issue of on conflict prevention. And then when it comes to mediation and conflict resolution, just as difficult given the complexity of the conflicts. But the AU and the regional economic communities have got mediation units. They are improving their capacity. Unfortunately, at the moment, the AU also relies a lot on former heads of state, and I mean, for various reasons. But I think in terms of mediation, peaceful dialogue, there are mechanisms that, as I said, the AU is improving on. We do have a lot of international partners also in attempts at peacemaking, and
Liesl,
there I think, yes,
Liesl, you
go ahead.
mentioned something that's very key. The fact that many countries on the African continent that are, whether facing conflict or instability, do not want to be put on the agenda at most times.
Right.
What is the reason behind that? What are the issues? Is it maybe people are going to see them as failures in dealing with the issues in their own countries? What are the challenges there? And why do they not want to be put on the agenda?
Yes, it's often the case. Countries want to deal with the issues themselves. Also reluctant to it's almost embarrassing, to admit that your country is in conflict. And we saw, it happened throughout the last couple of decades at various junctures. I remember very well being in Addis Ababa when there was, the Boko Haram crisis was at its height. And Nigeria was just very reluctant as a big state of the African Union to have it discussed and to have, other countries getting involved. And then finally, the situation got so bad, and internationally there was such pressure and from neighboring states that Nigeria accepted to have this multinational task force of the AU against Boko Haram. So Ethiopia is another case where the Tigray conflict, for example, it took a long time for that to be on the agenda of the PAC, and ultimately, as we know, it was the Pretoria Peace Agreement in November 2022 that the first, a ceasefire agreement for Tigray. But now, as we know, things are extremely tense again in Ethiopia, but the African Union is not discussing it. So, there's very little actually the Commission in Addis Ababa can do if states are reluctant. But, I'd say on the whole, if you look at the agenda of the Peace and Security Council, it does regularly discuss Somalia, South Sudan, Eastern DRC, the jihadist threats in the Sahel. So it just
Mozambique.
depends. And Mozambique. It hasn't been on the agenda for quite some time, I must say, because also SADC, it's our issue. We are dealing with this, and it was discussed, mentioned at the SADC summit recently in Durban. The Organ on Politics, Defense and Security did discuss it. So yeah, that's another issue that makes these things very complicated, is the relationship between the African Union and then the regional economic communities that sometimes feel this issue is our backyard, we are dealing with it ourselves, But the African Union, I think, especially at this summit in Luanda, should be given a role as coordinator of peace initiatives, because many of the conflicts, they are in a regional economic community, but as we know, often it's more than one regional economic community. As I said, there are, in the DRC, we now have Qatar, we have the US involved in peace negotiations. You have all these parallel tracks. It should be the role of the African Union as the continental body to coordinate these mediation efforts.
Liesl, unfortunately, we have run out of time and are going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you.
That's Liesl Louw-Vaudran, an International Crisis Group Senior Advisor, joining us on the line.
When the story moves, we move. Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1